Hello, my name is Patrick Moore.
I'm Marlisa, McLaughlin.
And welcome to Health Buzz.
Perspectives on natural healing.
I'd like to thank all of our viewers who wrote to us, who sent emails on our last show on vitamin D and sunshine. The reviews were tremendous in terms of people telling us how much it helped them. Fish oil, vitamin D, sunshine, seasonal affective disorder. And I'd like to talk about one of the testimonials from a dear friend of mine. His name is Chief Petty Officer George Tom. He's retired, started his military career here in Groton, lives in Thailand, and he follows our show, Health Buzz. Can you imagine that from Thailand?
That's so awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And to all the veterans out there, since we just celebrated Veterans Day, thank you for your service to our country. God bless all of you. But George said, since he's been using vitamin D, it really, and our show really reinforced the reasons why vitamin D is so important in the sunshine and therapeutic aspects. It's made him stronger. It's given him better health, more stamina, more energy, stronger immune system. The fish oil, great for the brain. So he was very thankful that we did a show on that. So George Tom, Chief Petty Officer, I salute you and thank you for following our show in Thailand. Tell all those vets who are retired there or all those who are doing their R&R in Thailand to follow our show, Health Buzz. Marlisa.
Yeah, we also had a nice comment from a social worker in Germany who said thank you. To read this, she is dealing with many of the refugees that are coming in from Syria and Iraq. How many did you say?
Germany has said they will accept up to 800,000, which is mind-boggling, coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, Turkey, Syria.
So many. So that's a latitudinal change, and everyone is under a great deal of stress, and she was just happy to get that knowledge out there, so she had a reference point. So she said thank you, and we thank you back. Thank you so much. And just also to hvetja, here I am with an Icelandic word, to encourage everyone who is watching the show that if you do find some of the information, or all of it hopefully, interesting, to pass it along, because we seem to really be making a nice impact on helping people empower themselves and to remember the cues of vitamins and sunshine and
yes,
all of those things. But thanks again, and we're moving right along here.
Well, we have a great show this evening that I'm very excited about. And it's entitled, Are We Overmedicating Our Emotions? In essence, are we a country that's overmedicating our children, our adults, our seniors, medicating for any kind of emotion that we might have? I mean, in essence, are normal life challenges now considered medical conditions? There's now disorder if we argue with our siblings, sibling confrontational disorder, so let's medicate that. Is shyness a medical disorder that we need to medicate for? Instead of going down through the normal, natural behavioral emotions of, let's say, human disappointment, are we over-chemicalizing our emotions today in America? Are we promoting, in essence, chemical warfare on our children and populace? If I look at some of the statistics today in America, we represent 4.5% of the population in the world, yet we consume almost 50% of all prescription medications. When it comes to our children, with 4.5% of the human the population in the world, they consume the psychotropic and the stimulants, Adderall, Ritalin, things like that, almost 50 to 70% of all prescriptions in the world. And it's estimated today that 26% of the United States population suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder. Veterans are committing up to 22 suicides across America a day, which is a tragedy. Why is that happening? So today we have a special guest, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Dorothea Braginsky, and I'd like to introduce her by telling you a little bit about her. Dorothea is in my opinion, one of America's finest academic treasures and one of the most insightful, holistic psychologists in the world. Her knowledge and experience span almost a half century, and we're fortunate that she's a UConn graduate where she did her PhD work. She's presently a professor of psychology at Fairfield University, where she has also been chairman of the psychology department. She's an author of countless articles, including numerous books, one of them being Methods of Madness, The Mental Hospital as a Last Resort. Besides teaching a number of fascinating courses, I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of them. She directs the psychology internship program at Fairfield University. So Dorothea, Dr. Braginsky, welcome And before we delve into all of these deep questions about are we over-medicating our emotions, I have a question for you.
A question? You never told me that.
Now, I understand you were born in Brooklyn, is that right?
That's correct.
Would you say that growing up in Brooklyn was the beginning of your analysis on the human condition of life?
What else can Brooklyn be? It is a microcosm of what we now call diversity. Our students or youngsters who played together on the street would be a diagnostician's paradise, because almost all of us had many conditions that needed therapy, medication, some institutionalization. And yet, we all grew up to be doctors, lawyers, successful business people. We no longer accept young people, particularly young people, as they are, and we insist on greater and greater conformity. And so when I grew up in Brooklyn, it was a very, very diverse, exciting, wonderful place. I don't know if youngsters have that same kind of excitement.
Well, you've had, I mean, your career has spanned almost a half century.
Oh, stop giving away my age.
A half century of experience in the world of psychology and, of course, your knowledge. What, when you look back over those years, what's changed? What was it like? I mean, you're talking about your upbringing. Kids were hyperactive. Kids ran around. Probably half those kids you were saying would probably be medicated in today's
Absolutely.
landscape. So could you give us like a comparison of a contrast of where psychology was and where is America today with our psychology?
Well, psychology originally started working with shell shock patients coming back from the First World War. That gave us a very big boost. That's when psychologists became very popular. However, most of us don't, I won't talk about nowadays. Back then, most people did not suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. People had emotional problems and dealt with it by going to their priest, to their minister, talking to their neighbor, using their own resources. Now, we go to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist. And that's a big change, because now when you have troubles and problems in life, you're led to believe it's an illness. We even use the word mental illness as if it's a medical condition. And once we cross that bridge, there's been no return. Even just 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we were looking at the environment in terms of how can we change the environment of people who are disturbed in order to make them live a happier, healthier life. Now, we never look at the conditions of living. When you talked about the human condition, we don't look at that. It doesn't matter anymore. What we do is we look inside of the person to locate and label the problem they're having. And as we discussed several times, the diagnostic and statistical manual used by psychiatrists and psychologists.
That's known as the DSM. The
Right.
DSM.
Now they're on their fifth.
It's what?
Right. They're on the fifth revision, and every revision grows and grows, so that we have disorders that work what would have been commonplace behavior. The one example you used is quarreling between siblings, or quarreling with your parents as you're growing up, which is a very important part.
Parental confrontational disorder. Got to medicate for that, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it was an important part of growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, being able to say to your parents what you think or believe, or at least...
Or disagreeing with your parents, right?
Well,
God forbid.
of course, but only if you're disagreeing with them. And so we've made everything. In fact, I can't think of one person on this planet, much less America, who would go to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, who would not walk out of the door without a label and, of course, a code number. The code number is very important. Psychiatrists can't prescribe prescription without having a code for the person, and neither psychologists or psychiatrists can get insurance money unless they have an appropriate code.
So there's what you're saying is today there's more of a financial incentive to find a disorder so you can prescribe and you make more money? Is that what?
Not,
Not quite.
I mean, that's there, but I really have to say that I've never met a psychiatrist or a psychologist who has meant to do harm
Yeah.
to any of
Good
their
people.
patients.
Good
They
people.
want to
Yeah.
help. They're really at the forefront of what psychology is supposed to be, but they're miseducated, poorly educated. They misconstrue the meaning of problems that people have by translating it into a medical condition. And once we have done that, it opened the doors to psychosurgery, frontal lobotomies, lobectomies. You could always recognize those patients when you walked into a room. They sat like that, very quiet. It was very good for the management of patients in mental hospitals because there's nothing to manage. And we made progress, so to speak, by instead of cutting their brains apart, we gave them medications that did very much the same thing. The long-term effects of the powerful psychotropic medications like Thorazine that was given to patients in mental hospitals to quiet them, make them manageable, had them sitting like this also. So that this is not essentially the treatment that one would usually hope for in an illness. The other interesting thing about mental illness is that it never can be cured. It can only go in remission. So you'll always be the person you were labeled with. It's just that sometimes you don't behave inappropriately. Okay. But given enough pressure, that terrible illness will erupt again and you'll need treatment. So you can't be cured of it, but we can make you behave better. The child who's disruptive in school, we can give them medication and it quiets them down. The ones who can't pay attention because perhaps the teacher's boring or some kids are distracting them, whatever the reasons outside there, doesn't matter. We never think about a teaching disorder, but it's a learning disorder. And so these youngsters are subject to medications about which we know nothing in terms of the long-term effects. And those are mostly...
These you're referring to Ritalin, Adderall, sort of
right,
these
these
amphetamine type.
amphetamine-based, absolutely.
And these are almost like,
Yeah.
they behave in the brain chemistry almost like cocaine.
Right.
I've
Oh,
read.
yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So,
But it has a paradoxical effect on children.
yes, on children.
It makes them calmer. However, they do become, and we're starting to see this now, in young adulthood, very addicted to amphetamines.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
we are on the second generation of amphetamines,
Absolutely.
correct? And so, and we
Absolutely.
don't have any history to study, any statistics as to how this is going to affect us down the road.
No.
So the genetics are being affected.
Oh, I mean, their entire lives are being affected and controlled by pills, not controlled by developing their own ways of managing this. Families are disrupted and they're controlled by the pills also. You know, your child misbehaves. My parents had a very good way of making us behave. It's quite simple. They would never even contemplate, here, take this pill. I mean, they were confrontational, sometimes a good little smack on the butt.
You
worked.
told me an interesting story, too, in Brooklyn, that when doctors used to make house calls,
Oh, yes.
and what would they look for in the home?
My mother had 3 of us, and one or the other, during the winters particularly, would be ill. And the doctor would come to visit at the end of his office hours. And whenever he checked us out, he'd also walk into the kitchen. My mother was cooking. He'd look into the pot, say, oh, that looks good. That's healthy. That's nutritional. Now, a doctor today, I've never had a doctor to ask me, what do you eat? They've never asked me that. And yet, they do ask if I take supplements. This is a new thing. And sometimes they warn you against certain supplements, like vitamin D, where if you have too high a vitamin D.
See, they're more worried
Right.
about a simple vitamin or supplement if it's going to interfere.
Right.
They're not as worried about the hugely potentially toxic effects of the prescription drug.
Absolutely.
Let's watch that supplement, that
Absolutely.
natural stuff. Be
Absolutely.
careful.
And so you bring up an interesting point with the doctor checking the food as well, because another thing that we're having is a lot of preservatives, preservatives and GMO in our whole food. The food chain have been so interrupted by unnatural, chemical-induced.
And even the diet pyramid that you spoke about yesterday, the foods that are prescribed by our government for us to eat are not particularly healthy for us. It's based on who knows what kind of research, and people are talking about now reversing that pyramid, turning it upside down. We just don't know the impact of the enormous change in diet that we've seen since I was a child. Enormous. I think there was one food that my mother had that was canned, and those were little Lesueur green peas because she loved them. But sometimes we had fresh green peas. There was no canned foods. There was no such thing as frozen foods.
No processed foods.
No processed foods. I mean,
none of these
instant
artificial
oatmeal. My mother would cook for 25 minutes to make the oatmeal. Cod liver oil, which was part of our breakfast, which I detested. One of my brothers, though, loved it. He used to smack his lips on it. But that cod liver oil was, and maybe that's what made the whole band of us growing up in Brooklyn go on to very successful careers. As I understand it, cod liver oil is great for the brain.
Absolutely.
And
So could we review sort of the timeline so that we can get a easier feel for where we're headed, because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
So early on, you saw a lot of natural approaches. So family and support
right,
were a very
Right.
big, strong part of that.
right.
And then moving from the family and support, the medical field began to become more involved. And so you had lobotomies.
the growth of the pharmaceutical industries.
Right. Well, we really shouldn't leave out electroconvulsive therapy
Right.
because that's making a comeback
I see.
particularly with depressed patients. They are still giving them electroconvulsive therapy, and it seems to work very well. I'm
Shooting.
being facetious. I mean, it was based on the science of two Italian psychiatrists working in a mental hospital who also noticed that there were people there with seizures, with petit mal and grand mal seizures. And they found that the people who had seizures never had the serious mental illnesses that they found among the other patients. And so they thought perhaps the seizures are protecting them from madness. And so they took very crazy patients, gave them seizures using electroconvulsive shock, and they thought that would eradicate the mental illness. Again, very well-intentioned, but the thought processes is that of a 4-year-old. I mean, if I had a college freshman suggest that as a research design, I mean, I would really be very seriously concerned about their intelligence. So the treatments that we've been using, they're not that different. People say, well, I take this pill, it calms me down. I take this pill, it perks me up. This is not magical. In the beginning of mankind, they knew what to take to calm themselves down, what to take to perk themselves up, what to take if they wanted a few hallucinations. I mean, this is nothing that we have discovered in modern medicine. What we have done is we've created an industry out of it, a very, very lucrative industry.
Very profitable.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
$330 billion industry, I understand.
Incredible, incredible. And so you have to, if you have this industry and you want it to grow, you want more people to give the pills to.
So
And
can we
so-
stop just there for a moment?
Sure.
And maybe ask you a few of your suggestions if you don't want to go straight into pills and the hardcore medicines. What could people do before they would decide to take a step like that?
Or allow people to promote that step if you're a good mother or you're a good member of the community. We first have to really educate ourselves about what is out there and what can we do ourselves to promote our own well-being. Most of us know what will make us comfortable and make us happy. Now, sometimes we're crippled by life situations, but we learn to, and that's one of the important things we learn to deal with the anxiety. We learn to deal with feeling sad. If you don't allow yourself those opportunities to learn those lessons, you have big troubles. Sometimes some therapists can be wonderful in helping the person learn more about themselves. And so I'm not suggesting people should not see a psychotherapist, but they should go to either experienced ones or those with very open minds, not those who are pushing pills or their particular
As
brand.
a first resort.
As,
It should be
yeah, as a first, that should.
Yeah.
And as a last resort, I believe in better living through modern chemistry. Sometimes it can help,
Yes.
but not for any extended period of time. The effects of even something as minimal as Valium or Xanax they're addictive.
Very. Yeah.
But then, of course, there's having family support, as you showed before,
Yes.
being with a very close support group. If it's not the family, which families have been driven apart, everyone's living in a different part of the country, but a family that you've made up and care about one another.
Companionship and nourishment of community,
Absolutely.
getting involved and helping one another. And
Absolutely. And reaching out to others when you have problems.
Even I see with the volunteers at the Yale New Haven Hospital or any type of volunteerism,
Right.
sometimes we get so caught up in ourselves, thinking about ourselves almost too much and our problems. But if we can get out there and help other people,
Right.
the gratification can be so profound.
Absolutely.
Get out of your skin almost and help the other people in the human race.
And also just talking to others. When college students, I'm finding they're all either on some kind of substance to control their anxiety or their depression,
Yeah.
and they have panic attacks. Well, I think anyone intelligent enough to be in college should panic when it comes time around graduation. They should feel a little depressed of, oh my God, my parents spent $200,000. What am I going to do with my life now?
Move home.
And so these are right. So these are real emotions that
But
relate
the question
probably
is,
to their
have we
lives.
reached a point in our society? I mean, we're the only country outside of New Zealand that actually allows advertising of all these drugs. So we see them day and night, so it's part of our subliminal conscious drugs. It's accepted. So anytime we have a stress,
Sure.
there's a cultural influence what's the problem? There's a drug for this, there's a drug for that.
Right.
We can over-medicate ourselves for it. And that's the challenge, living in America.
Right. Well, people have always medicated themselves with alcohol and with other substances. Self-medication has become one of the big problems in our society. That's the whole fight, the war against drugs, which we've lost. I mean, yet we never translated into the community of the biggest pill pushers, which are the pharmaceutical companies who lie to doctors and tell them these pills will help your patient.
so we have a cross-cultural thing happening too. So we have self-medication that's been going
Yeah.
on for centuries. And now we have the pharmaceutical crossover,
Right.
which is highly dangerous. But so Patrick, let's talk maybe a little bit about other things we can do besides the communal things we can do to help each other, like exercise.
Yeah, from a naturopathic perspective, I think my experience over the years is that, again, we live in a culture where it's too easy to go and get a prescription for a drug to medicate for any emotion. But something, I have a few suggestions, and there could be 50, but we only have time to go through a few. Exercise. John F. Kennedy said physical fitness is not only one of the most important keys to a healthy mind and body, but it's the basis of dynamic and creative intellectual activity. All the research shows that exercise for any type of moderate depression, even a little bit more than moderate depression, is far superior. We get those endorphins going, that oxygen going, the blood flow, nutrient absorption, and it's just so fundamental and gives us a sense of confidence and relaxation. Sleep better without getting,
Can I just jump in there for a minute? Because I would just wanted to suggest that if you do have depression and you're suffering from anxiety, sometimes you can't even get off the couch. So the thoughts of exercise are overwhelming.
Yes.
So just take a walk down the hall or to your mailbox, or just to get out and get your blood moving a little bit. The tiniest little things will do much more than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we've changed our society, so we moved indoors so much with video games, television, all these technologies, so not enough people actually get out and be part of our evolutionary cycle to be in nature, taking nature walks along the beach, get out there. And it's almost as if we have a nature deficiency syndrome, you might want to say, and that's a disorder, right? We got to medicate for that.
Yes. Well, absolutely.
Maybe if they
Can't
have a
people
forest
take
pill,
walk.
a forest and a pill we could take or something like that. The other thing, based on our last show too, we showed sunshine, which has such a mood elevating, therapeutic sunshine. Vitamin D, the vitamin D production actually creates serotonin, the neurotransmitter that calms our mind. And we see that with seasonal affective disorder when we don't have enough sun and people don't know why. We're starting to feel moody and lethargic, so get out in the sun. Or vitamin D supplementation can be so beneficial. Another aspect is the omega-3 oils. Remember we had the fish oil? We showed that.
Yes, I had some.
You grew up on the fish
You
oil.
love me and Brother
All
Smex's
lips. Fish
the
oil.
generations previous,
Right.
and all the kids got their fish oil. And it has a great effect on calming the mind and raising serotonin along with giving you the vitamin D if it's cod liver oil.
Serotonin raising.
Yes,
Right.
and one little thing just for our audience, the PISA, Program International Student Assessment. They look at 58 countries around the world and they test them different grades for science, reading, and mathematics. They found that the kids that they had the highest amount of docosahexaenoic acid, which comes from the fish oil, had the highest academic achievement, more so than how much income a family had. So the science is all out there. It's remarkable, and of course, calming the mood. The healthy diet. How often have you gone to a doctor? Well, here's the prescription. Well, did they go and examine your food plan or your diet? These are example of foods that raise serotonin levels, which is a transmitter that all the antidepressants have tried to raise. Even something as simple as a banana. I remember Nancy Reagan's favorite sleeping pill,
Right,
was to take a banana because half a banana before bedtime.
It's like a turkey, really.
Yeah,
It's like
turkey
turkey,
or
right.
heating up milk. It just calmed the mind and things
Right.
like that. So.
And smiling is like the banana.
Sure. I mean, food is the most important drug, the most powerful drug you're ever going to be putting into your body. And learning how to put together a food plan with therapeutic fats, therapeutic proteins, and what are called low glycemic carbohydrates can change your life. A suggestion, go out and buy Dr. Mark Hyman's book, Hyman. He is Bill Clinton's physician. It's called The Blood Sugar Solution, how you can put a food plan together so when you eat, it stabilizes blood sugar and you have stable mood, stable mood, stable moods. You don't have up, down, up, down. It has a massive effect on the brain. So start with that. The other aspect is fermented foods, what we've known as probiotics. It's astonishing the science that's coming out today. It's actually reviving hundreds of years ago, where Hippocrates, thousands of years, Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. But they're finding that most of our brain neurotransmitters are manufactured in the gut, and they're really influenced powerfully by these bacteria, where we have up to 10,000, some people say even 35,000 species, and 100 trillion of these bacteria, as opposed to 1 trillion cells.
No
Yes,
wonder
right.
we feel full.
So when we have all these drug companies trying to make antidepressants to raise the serotonin, it turns out that 80 to 90% of the serotonin is manufactured in the nerve cells of our gut. And the beneficial bacteria have much to do with that. They also make GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is what all the drug companies have tried to do with Xanax and Valium and everything like that. So it's very responsible. So getting kefir, and by the way, kefir, Turkish word, what does it mean? For thousands of years, good feeling.
Oh,
Feel
I
good,
didn't know that.
which is a liquid yogurt. So fermented foods, which have been part of cultures for thousands of years, look into it. Okay, and the man to go to, there's a book called Brain Maker by neurologist Dr. Daniel Pearl, P-E-R-L, Mutter, M-U-T-T-E-R. And so the other areas is, just to conclude with this, is important to get sleep. Sleep
We
puts you in a
overlook
good
that,
mood.
don't we? Because we've always have to, that's where we can steal time.
Right.
So
Yes, sleep. Spiritual wellness, having some type of higher level spiritual connection of some kind, whether it's even stress reduction, all the things that you do with yoga, you're a Tai Chi
Tai Chi.
professional and things like that. The last, the last couple, vitamin therapy. Vitamins can make a difference, and there's a lot of deficiencies people have with chronic stress, missing different nutrients like zinc. I remember Dr. Robert Atkins always telling me that, all the brain chemicals, enzymes run on zinc. Magnesium calms the muscles, fish oil, vitamin D, the B complex, plays such a role on our brain chemistry. So, learning about that is crucial before you decide to go on chemical intervention, which can actually cause, alter your brain chemistry for life. The last point I want to make is time. You have a loss in your family. Do you medicate yourself? Part of the aspect of the passage of time can be very healing, where you allow your body to mourn instead of numbing it. And I think you can get over it quickly. So time can play an important role. So those are just a few suggestions from a natural standpoint. And as Dr. Braginsky was saying, people need help, and mental health services, we're all for more of that, and going seeing your therapist, talking and things like that. But try to find someone who the first instinct isn't just to prescribe a chemical, and also consider naturopathic perspectives that can be so helpful for you.
It's going to be especially important now that billions of dollars are going to be spent on research of the brain.
Yeah.
Now you cannot get a grant to do research in psychology unless there's a neurological component. And no psychology course or neuropsychology course teaches anything about the chemistry of the brain other than the intervention with drugs.
And nutrition is not part of it.
Oh,
Vitamins are not part of it.
I mean,
fish oil,
I've had a lot of courses.
Fermented foods, which are producing all these
of
chemicals.
Course, great things.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful not to move with the times, because the times, I thought they were changing for the better back in the 60s. But clearly, we have to be more careful, depend much more upon ourselves, and the power we have to try to improve our lives, which can include a variety of things, but we have to take control of it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dorothea. That was perfectly said. And really take it into your hands and mold it, sculpt your life, find out what works for you.
Yeah.
Take these suggestions and just go slowly into things before you jump too fast, because the message is out there to really just move forward quickly without...
Yes.
To be happy.
It's an eternal struggle.
Yeah, whether it's pill-induced or otherwise, but to be happy.
Well, Dr. Braginsky, I would like to thank you for taking the time to share with all our Health Buzz audience and things like that, your wisdom. And we could go on and talk about this for hours. I'd love to have you back, because this is an eternal subject
keep going
that affects all of us, our families, our children. And just to conclude, one more time, I want to salute all our veterans, as Veterans Day passes here, for your service to the country. And for all the veterans who are being, I think, overprescribed on prescription medication, take a look at natural perspectives, nutritional and vitamin therapy and vitamin D, omega-3, fermented foods, and keep an open mind.
Okay,
so thank you very much.
And questions or comments, please contact us on Facebook or Gmail, and talk to you soon. Thank you.